Welcome back to AP World History. We're now going to take a look at the Christian empires and the Christian kingdoms during the post-classical age. And we're going to look at this in three parts. We're going to look at the Christian kingdoms outside of Europe, and then we're going to look at the Christian kingdoms within Europe, and then we're going to look at the conflicts that Christians have, primarily looking at the European Christians and their problems. So, the first area we can look at is Asia, and many of the Asian Christian kingdoms, kingdoms in the Middle East, mainly that were controlled by the Byzantines, fall. The most prominent place in the Middle East that falls to the Muslims is going to be Jerusalem, and that's in 638. And because of these conquests, some Christian groups survive, like the Armenians and the Nestorians, but for the most part, many Christians decide to convert to Islam, in viewing that Islam's conquests show that Islam is the true religion and not Christianity anymore. Next, we have Africa, and Africa had in Eastern Africa around Ethiopia and in Egypt had a lot of Christians, but again, with the spread of Islam, a lot of these areas fall. The Egyptian Coptics were a Christian group, and they thrived for a good long time until the Crusades came about, and the Muslims kind of started persecuting them, and they started to either leave Egypt or decide to convert to Islam to avoid the persecution. In Nubia, they lasted a little bit longer until the 1500s, but they eventually fell as well. And so the only African Christian kingdom that survives is Ethiopia, and that's because of the territory or the geography of Ethiopia, with it being in a very mountainous region and not very good for the warfare styles that the Muslims use to conquer territories. So they're able to survive, and they also have a very long link with Christianity and Judaism, with the link between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and so they have very strong Christian ties there and keep it going in Africa. But they're kind of the solo or the only outpost there until Christians from Europe start to settle the coast and then eventually divide it up through the age of imperialism. Then the most prominent of the empires is the Byzantines, and they're the old Eastern Roman Empire. Again, they have a central government just like the Romans did with a Caesar, and they have a Senate that helps advise them. But the big thing here is this Caesar is not only the Caesar, the political leader, but also a religious leader. And the term that's given to it is Caesaropapism, meaning that the Caesar, or the leader of the Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire, is the Caesar, the political leader, and also the Pope, the spiritual leader. And so they are seen as that. They can make all the religious doctrine and everything else that's necessary for them to help control the empire and run it. They usually get help from the patriarch, who is kind of the same thing as the Pope, or very similar to the Pope in Rome. And so they do pretty well, and they are a very strong empire for a good long time. They last 1,000 years after the Romans. Their most famous emperor was Justinian, who ruled shortly after the Romans, or the Western Romans fell, and expanded, tried to recreate the Roman Empire, wasn't able to fully create it, and the land and territory that he had was lost there shortly thereafter his death. But he also built some great things like the Hagia Sophia, which is the great cathedral that is there, that is then turned into a mosque. And he created the Justinian Code, and this code became a basis for many legal codes in Western Europe, because he reorganized and recodified the Roman law code, which had become just crazy at the time. And so the Byzantines do a very, very good job trying to keep the Roman Empire alive, and they do for 1,000 years. As you can see here by the map, the red outline shows what Justinian got back or regained. But you can see over time, from then on, it starts retreating back to 1020, where they're just stuck in really Asia Minor and Greece, and then it gets even smaller by 1360, where it's really just in Macedonia and some areas in Greece. And this is when the Ottoman Turks keep pressing and pushing them very hard until they eventually fall in 1453. And so they fall to the Ottoman Turks. This was partially due because of continuous warfare that they had with the Persians, and then that weakened them severely. And then when the Ottoman Turks came in as a renewed fighting force, they started losing ground very quickly. Um, there was a lot of corruption, way too high of taxes that made people not like the government anymore. And then the biggest thing was the church got divided in 1054 because of something called the Great Schism, where the East and the Western churches break apart, and they're no longer really allies. They're kind of allies, but not fully allies. And so what happens is um, the Crusaders on the Fourth Crusade, instead of going to Jerusalem to go take that back, instead they stop at Constantinople and pillage the city for a couple years until the Byzantines can get it back under control. And so, although they were supposed to be helping, they get knocked down by their own guys, and then uh, 100 years later or so, the Ottomans come in with a hard force and take them out. And the city might have been able to hold out for longer, but a soldier accidentally left one of the gates open, and they didn't get it closed in time, and the Ottoman Turks ran through, and all the guards and everyone else kind of ran to the city and tried to hide, and yeah, that didn't work out too well, and that led to the end of the Byzantine Empire. So the Byzantines fall under the last major Christian kingdom in the East. But they will pass on their heritage to Russia, or what will eventually become Russia, with Kiev. And they were good trading partners with the Byzantines, and they had a choice to become Muslims, Catholic, or Eastern Orthodox, and they decided to go with the Eastern Orthodox. And so they joined that, followed that. This empire would eventually fall to the Mongols or be severely hampered by the Mongols with their Golden Horde. But the ideas and beliefs of Eastern Orthodoxy would continue in this region and would eventually be adopted by the new Russia that would be built out of Kiev and Rus, with its head being in the city of Moscow. And so this linked the Byzantines to the Russians to the Byzantines, and this is why, if you've ever wondered why the Tsar in Russia is called the Tsar, it's because of their tie to the Byzantines, and that they take that title from them, and they view themselves as an extension of the Byzantine Empire.